Hi, welcome to my management and training of the animal presentation, where I'm going to walk you through my training plan and how I carried out a coaching session with my level 4. Okay, so I'm going to begin by running you through my training plan, which focuses on scent work, or more specifically scent identification. So my overall goal for the session was to teach Waffle to be able to identify a specific scent that I'd chosen when presented with a row of boxes that he would investigate and sniff up and down, and then hopefully he would indicate on the one that had the specific scent in it. So as part of my training plan, I've put a little bit of background information on the animal I was working with, who was Waffle, who is a middle-aged mixed breed dog who's very sociable, very friendly with both people and dogs. He's highly food motivated, which was really helpful. And as far as I know, he doesn't have a background in scent work, so I think most of the training that I was doing with him was relatively new to him. So I've talked a little bit about the time frame and the resource and the environment I was going to work with. So I chose to try and teach a skill in just 1 2-hour training session in the canine facility, and I used a little variety of resources, including a lead, the essential oil boxes, high value treats, and a treat pouch. And then I opted to not use a clicker, but to go for a marker wood, because I just find it's a slightly more natural way of training for me. So I've given a little rundown of the steps that I would use, or that I used to teach this skill, and they begin with presenting a box with a very watered down essential oil in it, so that I could begin pairing the smell with Waffle gaining access to a high value treat. So I presented it to him, and then when he sniffed it, then I captured that and I marked and rewarded and carried that step out a few times to kind of start building that association. And then I worked on introducing the element of choice by introducing 2 boxes, one without any scent in it, so that he was kind of starting to learn that he was actually looking for the scent rather than the box. And then I'm gradually working my way down to the floor, and then just slowly introducing more boxes and having him actually start to search the line of boxes, rather than just having them in my hand. And then we worked on his indication, which was basically holding his nose close to the box for 1 to 2 seconds roughly, and we just worked on prolonging that as the session went on. So I used a little variety of learning theories, with the main one being operant conditioning, which is a form of associative learning based off individuals pairing actions with consequences. So Waffle was demonstrating a lot of operant behaviours, which is basically a behaviour that an animal chooses to demonstrate due to it having had a positive consequence in the past. So I largely use positive reinforcement, which is kind of centred around operant behaviours, and it's a type of operant conditioning where you pair a positive stimulus with the behaviour you want, and as a result the behaviour gets repeated more often and is more likely to be shown, and the frequency is increased. So in this instance, I would reward when Waffle sniffed and got close to that specific scent. So over time, I was pairing that scent with the link of gaining access to that high value reward. So another theory I used was capturing. That was really during the initial stages when I had just the one box. And so because it was a novel item, I would present it to him and he would sniff it out of curiosity, and I would capture that behaviour by marking and rewarding it and then repeating the process, just trying to strengthen that association. And then we also used capturing actually later on when we were walking him up and down the row of boxes, because any kind of voluntary head snap or form of recognition, we would capture that and mark and reward that. So I also used shaping to build up the duration of the indication by rewarding incremental steps towards the end behaviour that I wanted. So we started at a very quick investigation of the box and the smell, and then kind of progressed to asking for a longer, more thought out sniff, to eventually a held position for a couple of seconds. So in my training plan, I've talked a little bit about timing for future sessions. So with future sessions, I would likely do once a week, because there have been studies that have shown that training once a week is actually more effective than training 5 times a week. And I've listed that below. So obviously another really important aspect to consider during the training plan is the welfare of the animal, and I made sure to maintain that in a variety of ways, including sticking to the various guides that are provided for professionals, and just for general animal owners, including the Animal Welfare Act 2006 and the DEFRA Code of Practice. So with the Animal Welfare Act, I'm mainly referring to the 5 freedoms. So I made sure to stick to those during our training sessions, by ensuring that I used kind and force-free training methods, such as the positive reinforcement, so that he was free from fear and stress. We allowed him regular breaks so that he was free to express natural behaviours, especially because it's quite an intense environment in the canine training facility. So he was allowed to go out and just sniff and just kind of relax regularly throughout the session. And then I made sure that the essential oil I used was non-toxic and highly diluted, so that it wouldn't cause him any irritation, any respiratory irritation or anything like that. So that upheld the freedom from pain and discomfort section. And then also I was careful with what food rewards I gave Waffle, because I wanted to make sure that they were suitable for him, and that aligns with DEFRA's part of the Code of Practice for the welfare of dogs, which states that they have to have suitable diets. So I made sure that that the food rewards we were using for him were suitable, and that he didn't have any relevant allergies or intolerances. And also I did find that food rewards were really useful in helping to create a kind of a bond, because although I've worked with Waffle before, the level 4 I was working with hadn't worked with him a huge amount, so there was a real lack of a bond there. So I found that constant food reward was quite helpful in improving that. So yeah. Okay, so for my shaping plan, this is where I looked at really the learning theories that I was going to apply in my coaching role for my level 4 who I was working with. And so one of the main learning theories that I based my session around was self-directed learning. And this was because it's been shown to be an effective form of teaching, and I felt that it would suit the style of lesson that I had planned. So my aim was that my level 4 would be able to understand the concepts that I was showing her, mainly on her own, but whilst I was there to explain anything she wasn't sure of, and direct her in the direction that I wanted. I found it really useful asking open questions, and I found that it was an effective method of pointing her in the right direction whilst still giving her whilst not giving her so much support that she wasn't doing it on her own. So according to one article looking at developing students' coaching ability through peer coaching, open-ended questions have been shown to improve students' understanding as well as facilitate personal development. So an example of an open-ended question that I used with my level 4 was, do you think that's the most effective place to reward Waffle? Because she was rewarding him from her hand rather than on the box. And eventually, through more probing, we both kind of came to the conclusion that it would be more effective to reward him on the box, because the end goal or the end behaviour that we wanted was him holding his nose very close to the box. So kind of teaching him that was where the reward came from would be more effective. And obviously it would help with the kind of the duration of his alert signal slightly further into the lesson. So another learning theory I incorporated into my lesson was constructivism, which is a form of self-directed learning and refers to learning that is done through an individual experiencing an event and reflecting on it, and therefore creating their own personal understanding of those events. So through these experiences, learners will often change or build on their prior knowledge of a subject or discount the new information presented to them, showing that they are responsible for building their own knowledge. So I took this approach for my level 4 by having her perform the task herself, which meant that she was having to experience what it was like to do the activity. I was therefore finding out how to get the best results through her own actions. I then made sure to reflect on it with her by asking her how she'd found the section of the task and if she thought it was effective or if she would do it differently next time, which I think helped to cement her understanding of what she'd just kind of experienced and gone through. So I also really tried to practice active listening with her, because this was highlighted by coaches as a really important aspect of being an effective coach. So by doing this, I helped my level 4 feel secure to express her opinions of how I had decided to carry out the training. So, if she disagreed with me, I think she felt quite free to express that. And I felt that it helped her to engage with me more by creating a better relationship between us and kind of more rapport. I also felt like she was slightly hesitant at first regarding my instruction, as she did have a fair amount of experience training and working with a variety of breeds already, although in a different field, and therefore she may have felt like my instructions were maybe a little bit too basic at first. But through allowing her time to tell me her ideas and showing her that I valued what she said, I felt like we built up enough rapport for her to give me that kind of respect back and actively listen to me as well, and to try and carry out my instructions as I'd kind of said them. So additionally, open-ended questions have been shown to increase the students' self-understanding and help to facilitate their own personal development. Which was just another reason that I found them so useful. Overall, I didn't find that there was a huge amount of difficult behaviour for me to address with her. I did feel like overall she did want to listen to me, and she was very willing to participate. However, there is research that's shown that learning that's done as an active process is more effective than when it's done passively, and students value knowledge more when they've found it out for themselves rather than when it is simply presented to them. And this was kind of another reason why I wanted to take a self-directed learning approach to the coaching session, because I felt like I was able to avoid any issues coming up with my level 4 kind of questioning my credibility, because she was discovering the information for herself alongside me. I was also very aware to try and take her needs into account whilst we were performing our training session. And kind of one of the ways that I did this was to make sure that everything that was shared with me in the training session was kind of kept private. So to ensure that I remained in the guidelines that are set out in the GDPR, whilst completing the assignment, I made sure to keep everything that was shared with me in the session confidential, and I didn't press for any more information than the trainee seemed willing to give. So in the future this will be very relevant for me as a dog trainer when I'm working with clients who might be in a similar situation. I'll make sure that I abide by the GDPR by only collecting necessary data, ensuring the data I collect is correct, keeping data in a secure manner, not keeping data longer than I have to, and only collecting information that I have a kind of a legitimate purpose for, as these are all requirements set out by the GDPR. So I want to kind of start to wrap up my presentation by reflecting on my training plan, and I'm going to use the Gibbs reflective model to do this. So throughout the training session I worked with my level 4 and Waffle to begin teaching scent work, specifically scent identification. Where he would sniff up and down a line of boxes and identify which box had the chosen scent in it by stopping and holding his nose close to it. I demonstrated the training step by step to my level 4 and then had her reproduce what I had just shown her, making sure to explain why I had done it in this way and make sure I was able to answer any questions she had. Eventually the level 4 was teaching Waffle pretty much on her own, just with me there to support her with answering any questions she had during her training. I felt that the training session was very positive overall, and Waffle seemed to really enjoy it and was very responsive to the activities. I felt like the level 4 I worked with responded quite well to my coaching techniques, and she seemed open to critiques I had or suggestions for improvement. And I really enjoyed the challenge that came with teaching a new skill to a dog, as well as figuring out the most effective coaching methods to teach someone else to lead the training as well. So some of the kind of the positive aspects of my training plan were that the level 4 responded well to the coaching methods and seemed to leave the session feeling positive. Waffle managed to perform the majority of the activities as we desired, and I felt like I was an attentive coach and answered the levels 4 questions well, and overall successfully helped her understand what I wanted. So there is definitely some room for improvement, which includes timing. Trying to teach a new skill with one training session was asking a lot of Waffle, and I felt that I would have gotten better results if I'd had more time and he'd had a chance for the training to sink in before moving to the next stage. Potentially location, because there's quite a lot of distraction for him as he's very motivated by dogs. So I found that this was a bit of a distraction throughout the training. And also I was quite keen to make sure that we finished the activities I had planned for the session, which meant I kind of rushed through parts of my plan, and therefore perhaps my coaching wasn't as effective as it should have been. So overall I think more training sessions would have been beneficial, because it was quite a intense or quite difficult skill to teach in that amount of time, and I didn't really feel like I could properly proof it within that time. And I did feel like the level 4 responded well to my coaching techniques as a result of kind of the open communication we'd established. I felt that it helped to feel more comfortable and confident in the training session and made her more willing to listen to my instruction. So overall, I felt like the session was successful and gave me a chance to practice skills that will be vital in future careers, allowing me to develop my organisation and communication skills. I improved my organisation skills as a result of having to create a full training plan for the lesson and ensure that we could cover everything in the time. I also had to ensure my expectations were realistic and achievable within the time constraint, and my communication improved because I had the chance to experience coaching someone in real life. And I was able to practice things like finding alternative ways to explain things when she wasn't understanding something, as well as finding an effective balance between being formal in my tone and friendly. And so for an action plan, I will work on continuing to develop these skills in the future. And I could do that by participating in more roles that involve coaching, which could even include just working with friends and family, as it would diversify the range of people I've worked with. And additionally, in the future, I could set clearer goals at the start of the session, so the person I'm working with has more of an idea of what we're working towards. So I'm just going to finish my presentation with a few questions. So why is health and safety important when designing a training plan, and how do health and safety considerations affect the design of my training plan? So it was vital to maintain the welfare of both the human and my level 4. and the animal. And obviously health and safety kind of regulations and everything are vital in preventing harm. Helps to prevent issues arising by ensuring I'm prepared for a variety of situations. And in the future, in a more professional setting, it can prevent and protect me in case of something going wrong, in terms of potentially someone taking legal action or something. So if I have carried out the necessary health and safety steps, hopefully that should prevent it. Anything occurring that could kind of result in something like that. So health and safety obviously affected how I did design my training plan. For example, I had to make sure that the essential oil I was using was both safe for the human and the dog, so I had to make sure that my level 4 had no relevant allergies. And I also had to make sure that it was a dog safe oil, and it was highly diluted so that it would reduce the chance of creating any kind of irritation for Waffle. I also made sure that there was no choking hazards for Waffle, because I made sure that the containers were big enough and sturdy enough that that you can just break any little bits off. Not that he was left unattended with the box, but still. And the facility I used meant that there was far less hazards than, say, training outside. So in future sessions, this is something I would have to manage by conducting a risk assessment first and making sure I found somewhere suitable to train. And then I also made sure that the food rewards were safe for Waffle by investigating any allergies or sensitivities he had beforehand. So, what was the most difficult part of designing the whole training plan? What did you do about it? Why? And what would you possibly improve? So I'd say the most challenging aspect of designing the training plan was not knowing which dog I would be designing it for, because this meant that I didn't know the dog's background and whether they had completed anything like this before, so would be familiar with the concept or not. I also didn't know what they were motivated by, whether they had any allergies, special requirements, or how receptive they would be to the training due to a variety of factors, such as how distracted they are by other dogs, their age, demeanour, breed, whether they were motivated in scent work or not. So because of this, I designed a plan that was fairly general and that wasn't especially advanced to ensure that it was more likely that the dog would be able to complete the task no matter their prior experience with scent work. I also brought a range of rewards, including some toy rewards and a variety of food rewards. During the session, I tried Waffle on a few different types of food rewards to see what motivated him the most, and I continued to use those treats. I feel I could have made the task slightly simpler so that it was more suitable for a variety of dogs, because I did feel that Waffle, being relatively new to scent work, did slightly struggle with some aspects of the task. I also could have brought a larger variety of rewards to account for preference, satiety, so use a high value treat at the end, and any potential allergies. And then so the last question, in what way did the instructor coach's communication style, reinforcement methods and timing influence the success or limitations of the approach across both species? So for my communication style, I feel I was overall clear in my communication style and practiced active listening, which helped to create open communication between me and my tutee, where she felt listened to and supported. Clear communication was essential in the task as it ensured that my level 4 understood what I was asking of her and how she could achieve this, knowing what she was and her knowing what she was doing also meant that the training was more effective for Waffle, as she was able to provide him with much more clear and consistent instructions. So, however, I could improve on my communication by beginning the session like this, as I was slightly nervous at the beginning. I didn't offer any constructive criticism, which potentially slowed progress down a bit. I also would have slowed down some of my explanations to make sure that they were more in depth, as I did feel like I rushed through a few things to make sure that we fit the whole training plan into the session. So my reinforcement method, because WAFL was very food driven, the food rewards were very effective. We did come across an issue though, that over time he started to seem to get full, so we combated that by changing the rewards we were using to kind of keep them novel. And we used a reinforcement schedule that rewarded every time he did something, kind of taking a step towards the end behaviour, because obviously it's quite a challenging task to teach, and as it was new to him, I wanted to make sure that he was getting regularly rewarded to keep up the motivation. So yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation. And here are my references.